They make it regularly going to the bathroom. Ashram. And they give strength to a person. And even though they're sweet, they don't spoil a person. They'll make a person addicted to fine foods. They're excellent. Amos, I would have thought. Okay, I would have thought there's no problem. Even dates, even if you fill your stomach, it's not going to give them this disease. Kamashal, no, that even these fine dates that are so beneficial to the person, they're still not good for you to fill the stomach. What is this disease called achila? Or Lazar, says it's a fire of the bones. Now, at this point, they don't really know what's fire of the bones. It could be a real fire. What is it? What is it? He said in their language, when they spoke Aramaic, he said, Eish Garmi. It says the fire of the bones. They understood already it's a fever. No, they understood in the Aramaic, when they said Eish Garmi, fire of the bones, that was their expression for a fever in the internal fever of the bones. Okay, Mayasu says, what is the cure for this bone fever? Okay, Amrabaya, Amralaim say, remember I told you the woman that he called mom, who wasn't his mother, she was his nursemaid. She raised him, she adopted him. Okay, Kula Shakyone. So she told him the following: all of the usual potions that we drink in order to get better, Tlasa, Bashava, you drink them for 3 days or 7 days, or Tracer or 12 days. The high adamiste libitase. This potion that we're going to discuss in 1 minute for this cure of the bone fever, you have to just keep drinking until the person gets better. Kula Shakyone, also all other potions are libre kanam. You take them before when the heart is still empty, when you haven't eaten yet. Okay, but high busted but this one is even you take specifically after you've eaten. Basically, so the person went to the bathroom to defecate. The person came out and washed his hands. Okay, and then they bring him it's like a loose cooked thing made from a lentil flour and salt. Okay, ubuna de chamra atika, and you also bring him a fistful of old wine. You mix them up together, and then he eats it. And then also he should wrap himself up in his sheet. And then the person should sleep. And nobody should wake him. You should just let him wake up by himself. When the person does get up, the person's going to sweat it out. Then don't wake him, let him sweat, because he's going to sweat out the disease. And then when he gets up, you should take the sheet away below, because you don't take the sheet away, how do you love away? He gets sick again. You have to. The sheet's good so long as he's sleeping until he sweats it up, and you have to take it away from him. Amrle, Eliel Nabi said to Rav Nosson, now, these things that are coming up are things that the Rambam does bring. So even though I mentioned the last couple of days that these things we don't use, but these are things the Rambam actually does bring, and that was the Rambam and his incredible. You don't know me so long, but over in the last about 6 years, I went through a tremendous convulsion because I became so upset by being bullied by the modern renditions, in the religious world I'm talking about. I'm not talking about modern, they're not religious, but the modern religious, they became such bullies, you understand, with everybody pushing their particular viewpoint. And I was really upset with them. And I said, I have a right, We have the most comprehensive view of Judaism that we know is the Rambam. And I'm going to go back to the Rambam. And not that these people beat me up. You understand? And when you learn the Rambam, the things that's most amazing, that the uneducated Jews, they paint the Rambam as this kind of distant, unfeel. The Rambam, it's true that he was the height of intellect, but you'll never find the person that was closer to God. Read the Rambam. You never found a person more absolutely in love with his creator. And it's stunning how close the Rambam was to God. If you read his works, you understand where his mind was and where his feelings were and where his heart was. The Rambam was someone really, really incredible. And the more I learn the Rambam, I feel he was probably the loneliest person on earth. I don't know who he spoke to. I don't know who he could talk to. And I'll tell you, my own rabbi, who I revered, and I learned with one rabbi for 14 years. I held one man's hand for 40 years straight. 14 years. I absorbed every word. And at one point, it finally dawned on me. I remember where I was standing. It was the nighttime. It was outside. That place doesn't exist anymore. It's an Eretz Yisrael. They already rebuilt it. It's another. It doesn't look that way anymore. But I was standing there, and it finally occurred to me. And I looked up at my Rebbe. This is after I learned from him for years. And I said, Rebbe, you only made a yeshiva because you didn't have anybody to talk to. And he just looked at me and he nodded his head. He couldn't. He had to create people he could speak to. He had to educate people who could talk to him. And sometimes when you learn the Rambam, it's you feel how much he yearned, huh? Yeah,
You have to
how much he yearned, for people who could relate and understand what he was speaking about, because he was such an incredibly developed human being. It's hard to grasp. Yeah.
Emotion.
Yeah, really, that's exactly, and you see it. So and we really don't have anything like it. There's certainly, I'm not saying not other rabbis of his time. We're many great rabbis, but here in black and white, we have the Rambam on paper. You understand the difference? Even like the Ramban, etc. We have a great amount of work from the Rambam, from the Ramban. We have a great amount here. We have incredible Torah from the Rashba. Incredible we have, but this absolutely comprehensive rendition of the Torah. Who do we have? Who do you have like the Rambam? The Rambam from beginning to end. You understand? He wrote everything down so we can see, and that's why I used to yell at people, because it's true. There are places where forget other Rishonim would disagree with them. The Gra utterly uproots certain Rambams. He wants to bury him in these places. But the Gra himself revered the Rambam. You understand what I'm saying? You have to disagree in a number of places. And I say, even if you subtracted let's say you want to paskin like the Gra against the Rambam, okay? Even if you subtract all the places that the Rambam disagreed with, you still have an utterly comprehensive view of the Torah. The Rambam is an incredible guy. So I got upset. So you have to realize you have. Now that's another problem, but that part was solved essentially by other great rabbis who took personal responsibility. What I mean to say, I do the same thing. There are rabbis from our more recent tradition who we revere. Often their books don't hold water. Often books that they write or things that are written in their name don't hold water. So what do I do about it? So I work out the piece of Torah myself and borrow until their idea I can demonstrate from the text. So I take personal responsibility for what I'm saying rather than blame it on them. And the same thing, once great rabbis, like for example, like the Kesef Mishnah, who was the Beis Yosef, who absolutely sat down and sourced the Rambam. We have quite a number. Mishnah, we have a lot. We have so many books of giants of Torah who substantiate the Rambam. And you're right. At that point, it's not the Rambam, it's them, but it's fine. It's them subjugating themselves to the Rambam. But but I'm just trying to point out, don't be bullied. Don't be bullied. If you look sometimes, you'll try and get a Moreh Nevuchim today. The book Moreh Nevuchim. So it's a hard book. It's written in Arabic. It's very hard to understand. But anyway, but half the books are not honest. They're shoving all of their beliefs into the Rambam.
When they translate them,
I'm not.
But I'm translate English, and it's not the Rambam.
I'm not even talking about the translation. I'm talking about people who put out books with commentaries, and they're attributing to the Rambam all of their own notions they put into the Rambam. So don't be bullied by people. You can read the Rambam. The Rambam was a wonderful, the most incredible guy. In any case, so here the Rambam. One of the things that makes the Rambam so powerful, because the Rambam, knowing that he was a chacham, he knew that he was a very learned person. And remember that a person is allowed to rely on their chacham. A person is. And remember, another point is this, and I'll come back to this another time. Here we have a rule in the Torah. It says im svara lama likra. What does that mean? A thing that is, when I say common sense, I mean Torah common sense, but a thing that is self-evident, okay, for a Torah mind, that has the value of a pasuk. A thing that's self-evident to the intellect of a Torah person has the same thing as the Torah law. It's the same thing, but God didn't have to give it. You understand? God didn't have to. Yes, because it's self-evident. At least to a Torah person, it's obvious. You understand? The person is properly trained, and the Rambam, in many places where the world is shocked by the Rambam, is because the Rambam knew what was self-evident according to his intellect, and he said so, and he wasn't afraid. He didn't care, and that's why the Rambam was he quotes Goyim. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's not afraid. He's afraid. Everybody's afraid they're gonna knock him down. He quotes Goy because the truth is the truth. I don't care. He didn't care. Whatever's true is true. Because the guy said it's not true. I don't know if you know this. If you look in the Or HaChaim, don't worry, I won't be late. If you look in the Or HaChaim, if you look in the Or HaChaim, when he speaks about when Yisro comes, he says this is a lesson from the Torah that you have to know that you listen to the people. Even by Goyim, they have what to tell you. That's the Or HaChaim by Yisro. Okay, so anyway, so he wasn't afraid. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, if the Rambam decided to bring certain of these things, it means the Rambam, in his understanding, was able to differentiate between those places that I told you are not to be applied, and the things that he held were general guidelines that should be applied. He brought them. Okay. Amalei Leo's Lord, he said them.
This is not a weird medicine thing.
No,
this
this is what I said to you. Right. But you could still argue. But I'm saying, thank God that we have the power of the Rambam to make this differentiation for us. Amalei Leo Nabi said to Nasam. I don't know if I'll tell you one more thing. This is terrible. Rav Simcha Zizal, my Rebbe did it. Eliyahu Nabi, didn't die, so he shows up at different times in history. He keeps showing up around. When I was in yeshiva, they held that if you hadn't seen Eliyahu, you were nobody.
Who held that?
The Bali Musar. I remember they held if you didn't see Eliyahu Nabi. I don't know if you know this. The Sayeret in Israel, the one of the the special forces, what are they called? What are they called? The Rangers in the Army or the Navy SEALs. So they have like the super special force. So way back in the old days, I wasn't in it, but I was told, in the old days, if a guy would want to get into this special unit, they would just say to him, "Tell me, describe Petra to me." You know what Petra is? Petra is in Jordan. It's a famous red rock. So they would just say, describe Petra. What was the point? It was understood if you hadn't stolen across the border and visited Petra, you couldn't get in. It was understood. You never heard Petra, you can't get into the thing. So they used to say, you didn't see Eliyahu Nabi. Who? They would say, you didn't see Eliyahu Nabi. Who are you? And the day my Rebbe said it, I almost fainted. The day my Rebbe said, I almost fainted. What do you mean? You never saw Eliyahu Nabi? What's wrong with you? Eliyahu said to Rav Nassim, "Echol shlish, stay shlish. You eat 1/3 of your stomach. Well, you drink 1/3 to fill up the stomach. Okay, v'hanach shlish, and 1/3 of your stomach you leave empty. And that why is that? Because when a person gets angry, the stomach could explode. It could explode. And so what's the point? So if you left a third empty, you'll be able to handle it. Talmud, you'll be able to withstand being angry. You'll be able to withstand being angry. But if you filled your stomach, then God forbid, then you'll get angry. If the stomach's completely full, then the stomach's going to burst, God forbid. A person doesn't want to get intestinal disease. A person should accustom himself to dip his bread in vinegar or in wine, both summer and winter. And also a meal that you particularly enjoy, don't fill your stomach up completely. If you really like that, this is your favorite dish, hold back. Don't fill yourself up completely. And another point he said also is what? When you need to go to the bathroom, go. Don't hold it back. We're talking here about defecation. Don't hold it back. You have to go. It's when the feces returns to the body, it gives people bad disease. Okay. Furthermore, if there's like a very weak, bad white wine, you drink that, it gives a person weakness. It makes a person weak. There are 60 types of wine. Okay, and the kulu sumka now the best of all of them is a very red wine that is fragrant. A red fragrant wine is the best. Read the kulu. What's the worst wine that we just mentioned? A weak white wine, which makes a person weak. I'm Rabbi Yehuda. If a person sits in the springtime mornings, he sits in front of the fire. And then he anoints himself with oil. Then he goes out to sit in the sun. So that's going to give the person weaknesses and weaken the body. We learn. If a person let blood. Now, today they don't do much. I want you to know something. And I actually, at one of my lectures, I was once lecturing in Chicago, and a doctor stopped me. But they put it when I let blood, I feel wonderful.
You let blood?
Yeah. I don't mean listen. I don't mean psychological. Excuse me. When I don't let blood by a bloodletter. I let blood by donating blood to the blood bank. But when I go to the blood bank, I feel my body feels absolutely wonderful. So one time I was lecturing in Chicago, and a woman got up and she said, "Please have to speak to you." She's a doctor. And she said, "Listen, this is often a sign of a certain illness," she said. So she investigated. And after she came back, she said, "No, you're okay." I appreciated that she was worried that I had the illness that does that to people, but I didn't. But the point is anyway. So for sure, in their times, bloodletting was a normal refuah. So therefore, yeah. So totally, if a person let blood, and then the person has sexual relations, a pregnancy resulting from that is going to make weak children. Let's say both the husband and the wife let blood and then have relations. They're gonna have children who have a disease that's like it has a bug in the brain. Papa said, but this problem of letting blood and having relations is only a problem of low time. As long as the person hasn't eaten between letting blood and having relations. I will tell you, as long as the person ate something between letting blood and having relations, less than there's no problem whatsoever. The guy comes off the road. Remember, they were traveling by foot. Okay, so a person comes off traveling on the road, which is exhausting, and then has sexual relations. Having a again, he's going to have the children resulting from that pregnancy will be weak. Basically say, if a person comes from going to the bathroom, you come out of the bathroom, you don't have relations right away. You have to wait for the time of a half meal. Why is that? Because there's a shade of the bathroom that accompanies the person. This demon accompanies the person for the distance of a half meal. Now, we have different opinions how big a meal is. A meal is either 18 minutes to walk or 24 minutes. So the kula is wait at least 9 minutes between the bathroom and having relations. And the more stringent view is to wait 12 minutes. Because this demon of the bathroom accompanies the person, so you want to wait. But if the person didn't wait and have relations right away, having the person really gets the children with what they call the dropsy or epilepsy, they call it. It makes the person faint. If a person has relations with his wife standing up, he gets a type of disease where the person shakes and is woozy. If he has relations with his wife while he's seated, okay, it's a type of swelling of the stomach. If she's on top and he's below, okay, he gets the disease of delaria. Now the Gemara here doesn't define delaria for us. He says my delaria. What is delaria? He never tells us what it is. He just answers he tells us what the remedy is. He says, Levi, some delaria, the cure for delaria, okay, is dardura. What is my dardura? So what is dardura? Rabai says marika de chochi. It's really it's kurkum, what they call saffron. Yeah, kurkum is the saffron. Okay, and what is chochi? Chochim are thorns. So it's the saffron that grows on the thorns.
Not on, planted amongst the thorn bushes.
Yeah. I think it grows actually on the partition of the thorn.
No, it's the
okay. I think that's
the stamen of a certain.
Rapapa, it grows. Okay, Rapapa olive. So, but what do you do with this saffron? So Rapapa used to chew it up and swallow it. Rapapa would chew it and spit it out. So there are two opinions on how you use it. If a person it loses his ability to have sex, Lacey Tlas Capize, okay, she should take 3, these are large, you take 3 containers that hold 3 reviuses each. Of cortum, of karkum, okay, which grows on the thorn bushes. Okay, and then the person should grind it up, and he should boil it in wine. He should drink it. Okay, these are the very things that when he took that medicine, he's returned to the strength of his youth in terms of having relations. There are 3 things that we can take away the strength from a human being. And here they are. Pachad, being afraid of something that's going to worried about making money, or being afraid that like an enemy is going to come upon him. Okay, derech, also what? Being on the road, also with the way they used to travel, takes away a person's strength. And also a person worrying about sin, also that they sin, also takes away the strength. Pachad, how do we know that fear takes away a person's strength? It's written, my heart was also in trembling, etc., and confused, and my strength left me. He was worried, he was frightened. My heart was frightened, and my strength left me. Derech, how do we know that going on the road takes away a person's strength? It says, Ina b'derech Kodesh Baruch Hu smote on the road. He smote my He took away, he afflicted my strength. Avon, how do we know that worrying about sin takes away a person's strength? He says, Kashal Avani Kochi. Again, that my strength was diminished in my sin. So we see that also sin also depends on the person's strength. Okay, there are three things that diminishes the body of a man. That is eating standing up, drinking stand up, and having sex standing up. Now this is a problem. The Kitzur does bring it. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings not to eat standing and not to eat standing or drink standing. You see in the world today, people do it, and so all the modern books are busy trying to find a defense. But Lamaisa, the Kitzur definitely.
See, they're all weak.
The Kitzur definitely brings it not to eat and drink, stand up. And I know today all the simples they have like a smorgasbord. Everybody's walking around standing.
Yeah, but they also have tables and chairs.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God. Yeah, thank God. But I'm just saying, you see that people do. So, but if you look at a number of the modern books, we'll bring them sometime. A number of the modern books spend a long time finding kavschus to defend the behavior, and you have to know that's also something. The Ramah was the master of this. The Ramah, remember the Ashkenazic Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah. So he dedicated mighty efforts to defending what people did. The opposite of what you think. Instead of attacking what everybody did, he first looked to defend what people were doing. He went out of his way to justify things that had become widespread custom among Jewish people. He didn't immediately knock them. And I want to explain to you why that is. Because we have a rule. We saw it by Hillel, Azak, and other places. We said, but if they're not prophets, they're the children of prophets. So you'll see that Jewish people, because they live under the auspices of the rabbis, usually if a custom becomes ingrained, it was under the auspices of the rabbis of the time, and there's usually a reason for it. If you want something really interesting, the Shema, understanding the Shema, it's hard to understand. What is that? You're supposed to have kavanah when you say the line of Shema Yisrael, Shema Kem, Shema Chad, but it's hard work. So Ray Feinstein Zitzal actually had a responsum explaining what the words Shema Yisrael, Shema Elokeinu, Shema Chad is. And it's a big thing. He says all the names of God are the same translation. None of the names translate. All the names are the translation of every name of God is God. That's first of all. The translation of every name of God is God. Every single one. But anyway, so he's busy trying to explain, what it should be. So and believe it or not, who he quotes to support himself? He quotes the siddur, the Yiddish type siddur from Europe. The siddur that when they translate the Yiddish for the women, so he quotes that. He quotes that, although he disagrees with the siddur at one point also, but he quotes it to back himself up. Why? Because he knows that siddur was under the auspices of what? Of great rabbis. Yes, and there's another case like that, which is famous. There was a certain woman after the war. She came to Rabbi Feinstein. She said a terrible thing happened. My husband disappeared in the war. Second World War. My husband disappeared. And I went to such and such a base then, and the basis of the testimony, witnesses, etc., they paskin that my husband is dead, and then I was allowed to remarry. And I remarried. I'm here now in America, and my first husband just showed up. What do I do? No, big thing. Right, Feinstein does his research, etc. He invites the woman back. Listen to this. He invites the woman back.
Speak louder.
He invites the woman back, and he says to her, "You're lying." He says, "This man who you said is your first husband is a new guy you fell in love with, and you want to leave your husband, and you're lying, and you're saying that it's your first husband." He says, "You're lying." She broke down and she said, "It's true. How did you know?" So he said, "I'll tell you how I knew." He says, "I thought about," he says, the rabbi who's based in pronounced that you were single and you were allowed to remarry. He was a very great rabbi. Rabbi Feinstein said, in all my career and all the times that I ever allowed a woman to remarry, it never happened that the truth was that the husband was alive and he came back. He said, and if such a thing never happened to me, he said, I'm positive it never happened to this rabbi who allowed you, who was greater than me. He said, is greater. He says, and therefore I knew you were lying. She broke down. She broke down. Okay, you always have to know some of these things are ploys, by the way, sometimes. But in any case, that was a story. But if finds he quoted the sinner. Okay, so you have to back him up. Anyway, so you want to look to. So we do spend time first trying before we have to go and say something is a minhag shtus. No, it's a minhag of foolishness, and we're going to get rid of it. We first try to defend it. There are 5 things where a person will be closer to death than to living. Here they are. Okay. And if he does any one of them, if a person eats and gets up immediately, drinks and gets up immediately, if a person lets blood and gets up immediately, the person sleeps and gets up immediately, the person has sexual relations and gets up immediately, those things are mamash, brings a person close to death. There are 6 things, if you do it in order, one after another, the person's going to die immediately. This is what you do these 6 things in order, the guy will die. A guy comes off the road and he's exhausted. Okay, he keys down, then the person lets blood. Then he goes into the bathhouse, it's steamy and hot. The person drinks alcohol, becomes drunk. Then he sleeps on the ground, and then lives with sexual relations. The guy is close, he's going to die. But that's only when he does them in this exact order. Abaya says what? He's listening. He says, you're right. Kisidron mace. If he does them in order, he dies. Shalok Kisidron, okay, cholish. But if he does them out of order, he's still gonna get weak. Enikwa says, is that really true? You want to tell me what? He only dies when he does all 6? There was a woman named Ma'uras, and she did these things, and she had her servant, or she did these things to her servant. Plus, she had him only do 3 of them, okay, Omis, and he did die. She didn't need all 6. And I said, no, he said, what? That was extenuating circumstances. The guy was weak. And this is also a problem in all clinical trials. What the Gemara said here is also a thing that we use in clinical trials to this day. In other words, sometimes when you see a negative result of a certain remedy or medicine, we don't automatically assume that the medicine killed them. You still have to investigate that there might have been incidental, or there might have been incidental circumstances that killed the person. So it's a big problem. And I just heard 2 days ago, this is a machlokas that's happening right today with the COVID vaccine. Right now, this is one of the fights that's happening. The anti-vaccine people are claiming that every negative result that happened to people who took the COVID vaccine was from the vaccine, and the scientists who believe that the vaccine was proper and a kosher vaccine say that those deaths were incidental. They had to do with the person's circumstances. That was the fight. So you see the Gemara itself, it takes this analysis into account. Okay. Shmona, Ruban, Kasha, Umiyutan, Yafa. There are 8 things. We're having a lot of, very much of it is no good, but it's good to have some. All these things, it's good to have some. Here are things that it's good to have some, but not a very lot. Derech, okay, traveling. Derech Eretz, okay, sexual relations. Osher, it's good to be wealthy, some, but not super. Okay. Umalacha, what's some wealthy? That's the question we have to find out. Umalacha, labor, it's good, some, not super much. Yayin, wine, some, but not super much. Shena, sleep, some, but not super much. Okay. Chamin, okay, drinking hot water or washing in hot water, because of stam and bloodletting, all these things, some is good, but not a lot. Shmona Martinez says there are 8 things that lessen a person's semen. Beilahain, Amelach, salt, Barav, hunger, okay, Banetak, having leprosy, Bechia, crying, Beshena Gabe Karka, sleeping on the ground, Begadganios, that's what they call kuzbara. Kuzbara might be cilantro, what they call cilantro today.
No,
yeah. Okay, Bekisha Shlobizmana, okay, and also what? Having hops that are from the wrong season. Okay, we'll see in a minute what that is. Because it's down lamata, and any letting of blood in the lower part of the body, we'll see in a minute. Kiflayim. Okay, if a person lets blood in the lower part of the body, okay, it's doubly bad, and doubly lessening of the semen. Tana kashem shekasher lamata kiflayim. When we learn, you know what? The same way that letting blood below is doubly bad for the semen below. And letting blood above in the upper area of the body is doubly good for the semen, as we'll see. Rav Papa said, okay, now he wants to explain to us. So number 1, lamata the basin. What's called below? It's below the testicles. Lamala and above, lamala the basin is above the testicles. The Ben Ish Chai says something interesting. He says that the reason why he uses the testicles as demarcation was in order not to include the anus, because he holds the blood there. It could be letting blood there, the blood coming out there could be positive. Interestingly enough, that's the Ben Ish Chai. Okay, Kisha Shalobazmana, or something. I'm not sure if that's what he was, but something like the Kisha Shalobazmana. He said what we said. We spoke about that it's not good for the semen to have hops out of season. We said the same way that the hops are no good or detrimental out of season. They're very good. They're actually very good in the right season. Amar Papa, he says what? So and he wants to explain what is mana, what is the right season for the hops. Tammuz, that's the summer months. Shalom is mana, what's the not good time? Teva is the winter months. So the 3 months of summer it's good. The 3 months of winter, it's bad. But in the spring months, the 3 months of springtime and the 3 months of fall, lo malav lo kashu, they're neutral. They're not particularly good and not particularly bad. Amar, okay, now we're finally back to the ranch, Rabbosai. And this is the story. Remember we said, let's remember where we were a few days ago before we started with all this medical literature. Okay, we said that if a person, they have a certain disease called, a person gets a disease where all of a sudden they're not competent. Okay, they come in and out of competency. The person says he has like a
seizure.
Yeah, like a seizure or something, whatever it is. So now we said if he says when he's competent, he says, write a gift for my wife. And then he becomes incompetent. He says, no, don't do it. We ignore what he said because he's no longer competent. So now we have to see. Omar, kids would get leashed if he said when he was competent, write a gift for my wife. But also, according to Daikas, the Mishnah said, and he got this disease where he becomes incompetent because of and then he went back out to he said, don't write it. Ain't the clue. So he said, it's nothing, it's meaningless what he said. No, in other words, you can write to get. You can write to get. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Lakish said, I'll get Lauta. He says, not only that, you can write to get immediately, even while he's still incompetent, you can write to get and give it away. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, ain't kosvin ella kishistacha. You can write it, but you can only write it when he returns to competency. That's the argument. So now, my time of Reish Lakish, what was Reish Lakish's reason? Why does he say you're allowed to write it immediately? The Tani ain't with the Rachanan Klum, because you see, now, when it's asking the reason here, this is very important. This is what we're about to do is very, very important. We're going to analyze this argument in two ways. Very important what I'm talking about. The first way is, how did they learn it from their rabbis? Why did he learn it this way and why did he learn it that way? The second analysis is, how did he understand it and how did he understand it? I'm going to take a minute. We're not late at all. Listen, this is very important. When we study, their understanding is not the only thing we use to learn. We also learn by instruction. And when we go to our superiors, to our sources, we see what they thought was true, even if we don't understand it. I'm saying it's very important. And those, by analyzing what our rabbis taught us, the first thing we do is say, what did he believe? Is this permissible or not permissible? I may not understand a word of it. The first thing is I analyze, what did my teachers believe? Did they believe that this was permissible or forbidden? Now, once I see that, then I'll talk and see, how do I understand it? What does it mean? Why? Because and I want this saved my life when I was a kid. A young Talmid Chacham came to me and tried to convince me that a certain case was permissible. And I said to him, you know what? I tell you, I must admit to you, I have no idea why this should be forbidden. But if I study this book of this great rabbi, I can tell that he passed over it. And I have no idea why. But he did not. When the way he wrote the book, it's clear that he held that it's not permissible. And I have no idea why. Later, we went to Rabbi Yoshev, who was the Gadol Hador, and he explained to us why it's forbidden. So analyzing is saying what's true, even if you don't understand it, is the first step. You see what I'm saying? You have to see what's what for according to your tradition. Then you'll figure it out. Okay, so first, here the question is, my time of the Reish Lakish, what's Reish Lakish's reasoning? Not how does he explain himself. What did he see in the teaching of the Mishnah that made him say you can write the get right away? The Kotani, because it says, it says what he said afterwards means nothing. So you can absolutely ignore it. Just like if he was completely healthy, he said, write a get for you write the get. So now, even though he became sick a minute later and he said, don't write the get, you follow it means it's meaningless. So it means what? You write it immediately. Rabbi Yochanan Malach says, no, I read the words of the Mishnah differently. What does it mean? When we said that it means that his last words mean nothing, the missil, it means that when he gets better, you don't have to ask him again. I said, I also read the words that say that his words are meaningless, but not that it's meaningless that you can treat it as if it didn't happen. It's meaningless that once he gets better, you don't have to ask him again, but you can't give the get until he gets better. Okay? Okay, okay, but you never write it until he gets better. That was how each of them derived that their rabbis believed what they believed. Now, but my commificate, what's the actual argument? How do they understand the principle differently? Now, the second question. For Ish Lakish, this particular, I don't know this disease, Kordaikas. Where Ish Lakish says this disease, it's like falling asleep. When a person is, let's say a guy says, give a get to my wife, and he falls asleep. Are we allowed to give the get? Of course. Of course. What's the problem? He said, give the get. We give the get. He's not dead. He's not dead. And he's not crazy. He fell asleep. So he said, this disease, it's true that he's not competent, but he's gonna wake up. He's gonna come back to himself again. So therefore, it's just like a guy sleeping, so you can give it. He's still competent. Rabbi Yochanan says no. At the moment that he gets the disease, when he goes in and out, he's like an imbecile. He's lost he's a person he's truly an imbecile, truly incompetent. So therefore therefore he can't write to get till he gets better. How come Rabbi Yochanan doesn't see it like a person is sleeping? He says, I'll tell you why. He says, you're right. If a person says give a get and he falls asleep, you know why it's fine, even though he's not conscious? Because when he's sleeping, there's not missing anything. In other words, okay, he can get up at any second and not have to do. If he's asleep and he wakes up, he doesn't have to do something to become competent. The second he's awake, he is competent. He said, but over here, hi, mechusar maisa. This person who gets kordaikas, it's true that he can get better, but he has to take the medicine. He has to be healed first. So even when he comes to, he still has to be healed. So therefore, it's not the same. So that's a very good argument. So then how come Reish Lakish doesn't agree that he really is like an imbecile? He says, Shota lo same biyadi. I'll tell you why. He said, because when a person is an imbecile, there is no absolute cure for being an imbecile. We don't have a drug that can cure being an imbecile. But this person, somebody other, here we have a cure. What is the cure for kordaikas? We said the cure for kordaikas is what? Is red meat, roasted on coals, and red wine. That's how we got into that's how we got into the whole medical business over here, because we're talking about kordaikas. We got into the whole medicine. This is the cure for kordaikas. Okay. Did Rabbi Yochanan really say that? Did he really say that you're not allowed to write the get until the guy gets better? And even though we ignore his denial, but he's still not allowed to write the get. Remember Yehuda Amar Shmuel? Didn't we say in the name of Shmuel? And what we're going to show you a principle that once a person is better, even though a person, so to speak, is not okay, you can write the get immediately once he told us to write the get. Let's say we saw Shachad Boshnayim, a person cut another human being's windpipe and food pipe. Oh, Roshnayim, even if he doesn't cut them completely, he cut the majority of the windpipe and the majority of the food pipe. This guy is going to die. This guy is going to die. And at that point, so we said to him, here, you want to write a get for your wife? Veramaz, and he nods to us, okay. But he said, Kisru, by signaling, he's telling me, yeah, quickly write a get. Don't let my wife die. Don't let my wife die, a married woman. Okay, you're allowed to write it and give it. And I'm going to explain in a second. The Tanya, we learned also the Bryce similarly. If we saw a guy, his mama sliced into pieces, but he's still alive. Oh, it's all about sleep, where he's hanging from the gallows. Ramaz, and he made a sign for Amar, kiss will get lishti. No, so he's on the way out, but he says, write a get for right? Okay, we can write it. Now we see that what? And even though this guy, but the minute after he nods, he basically falls out, he loses consciousness. He's not dead. You can't write a get if he's dead. But he says, he nods, write the get. He drops out of consciousness. Then we have a couple of minutes before he actually expires. But he's gone. He's gone at that time. So he's gone. He can't do anything at that point. So how can Rabbi Yochanan say that the guy who has kordaikas, because he said yes, they said no, you're not allowed to write it. You see here, this guy essentially nods and goes out of consciousness before he dies, and yet we write the get when he's not conscious. So what's the problem? He says, there's no comparison. He says, Hassam over there, the case where Data Tzilusi. He says the guy, even though he's passing out, he's still completely competent. He's just dying, unfortunately. Okay. He's just starting to become so weak he can't stay awake, but he's not losing any competency whatsoever. He's merely dying. Okay. Okay, but the person is this person is confused. When he's falling out, his mind is confused. You can't write the get. Okay, remember Shmuel. When did Shmuel really say that when a person's windpipe and trachea, windpipe and food pipe are cut, okay, that the person is still considered alive? I'll show you where Shmuel said he's dead. Shmuel, didn't he say in the name of Shmuel, Shachabosh Roshnayim Ubarach Okay, if we saw a man whose windpipe and food pipe were cut, and then the guy escaped, me'idin olav, we can still go to court and testify that his wife can remarry, that the guy is dead. We can still say this guy's dead. Why? Because there's no question that the guy was going to die. So you see, Shmuel holds that once the guy had both pipes cut, that he's dead. Yeah, we were showing, but we were trying to say according to Shmuel that he's alive enough whether we can give the get. Okay, if you hold he's really alive, am I being alive? How can they go testify to his wife that she can remarry? Amri says, no, you make a mistake. Okay, so he's alive. It's just for certain he's going to die. So when the witnesses, this guy, after he says yes, and he's starting to pass out, he's still alive till he expires. The only point is, by the time the witnesses get back to town just to testify to the basin, that there's no question he's going to die. Shmuel didn't say. Shmuel said he's for sure going to die. But at that moment, after he's been shechted, so to speak, and between when he expires, he's still alive. There's no problem. I said, one second, Elamiata. If it's really true that you're allowed to testify that a guy's dead, even though you only saw him when he was for sure gonna die, and you don't worry there's something on the middle, okay, yegola yoda. Then a person who cut a person's two pipes should have, by mistake, should have to go into exile for killing him. Why do we learn? Even though we know that a guy accidentally cut both pipes of another person, the person doesn't go into exile for accidentally killing somebody. Okay, so it must be what? We're not sure the person is going to die. It's not true. Okay. 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 Now you made a mistake. Here's why. Yes, the person's for sure going to die, but when a person cut both pipes by mistake, that's what I mentioned before. We're not sure that there's not a contributing factor. It might be that the guy died not only because the pipes were cut, but because in the meantime the wind blew, and the actual immediate death was from the accidental killer and the wind. We don't send the guy to exile when anything helped him to kill the guy. Inami, alternatively, or the other way was that the person himself, by jumping around, squirming around after he was cut, he made himself die. He was going to die anyway, you're right, but he made himself, the immediate death was because he was jumping around, so you can't send the person to exile, but really what? The person was sure going to die. My binai, what's the difference between these two reasons? If we say it doesn't go to exile because maybe the wind helped, or maybe the dead man himself helped. Here's the practical difference. The shachti were based the shai what they used to call a marble house, a house where there's no wind. So if the guy accidentally cut both pipes of another guy in a house with no wind, so then then the guy will go to exile. If that's the reason, is the wind, then the guy goes to exile. But if the reason is what? But if the reason is jumping around, then he still won't go to exile. Or inami alternative, the shachte bebra below purpose. Or what? He shechted the guy outside, but the guy didn't squirm. So therefore, what? Since if the reasoning is squirming, the guy didn't squirm. The guy goes to exile. If the reason is wind, there was still wind around. The guy doesn't go to exile. Okay, let's say we learned in the Mishnah, guy became mute, and we said, should we write it? We said, should we write a get for your wife? Okay, so we said, listen, we ask him yes, no 3 times. The hulu and what? And once we see that he communicates accurately, we give a get to the wife. The wife says, get out of here. Why should you do? Maybe this guy has a seizure. He's shaking. His head's shaking. Yes, no. He got gripped by tremor. He has tremors that shake yes or shake no. Okay. Okay. Either he had tremors that shaking his head no, or tremors shaking his head yes. Rav Yosef Bar Minyom, Rav Nachman says, I'll tell you why. So what we do is like this. We ask him, okay, twice, and then we wait and ask him again. So by making an interval between the askings, we see that it's not merely a seizure, or not just the shakes. Well, the says, 1 second. 1 second. Maybe he has a particular set of shakes that have intervals. He shakes and then doesn't shake and then shakes. Well, it says, I'll tell you why. Okay, here's what we do. Chad lab utrain. Here's what we do. We ask him a question where we ask him 3 questions. One has a no answer and 2 have a yes. Okay, utrain lab. And then we ask him two no questions. The chad train and 1 yes. So that to say that he gets tremors in that pattern, that's ridiculous. Then we know for sure that he's really answered. Okay, Dorish Weltana, we learned another answer. What we do is we say things to him that are fit for the winter and the summer, and the summer for the winter. We say, yes, we want clothing, winter clothing in the summer clothing in the winter, whatever it is. But he shows us that he knows not to take it or yes to take it in the right time. Okay, mind you, One is the summer and winter. What is winter, summer? Elam, if you say what, gluf kare, like a wool coat, a wool suit, ostine, and flaxen sheets. Okay, one second. What do you mean? Maybe this guy got freezing, even though it's summertime. He got the chills, and he wants it. Or maybe it's maybe even though it's winter, he got the chills, or maybe even though it's summer, he got hot. Okay, so how can you know by his wanting the garments or not? Maybe it means nothing. You must sell the pair. It says you're right. We don't use clothing to test. We test them with winter and summer fruits. If he knows the difference, then we trust him. Okay, that's a daf. We'll call it a daf. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
My pleasure. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Yeah, there's no end to questions.
On this.
Yes, no end. So keep coming. We'll come back to it again.
So we caught up with Tisha B'Av.
No, what we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to do a page and a half. And then Friday, we'll do a page and a half. That's what we agreed.
Today is a tremendous public dementia with people there.
What's that?
Dementia.
Of course.
Tremendous
They found a new in the last 2 weeks, they got a new drug. Supposedly. Okay, but thank God, at least they tried. Yeah. You're right. I think the last 2 weeks they said they probably had a breakthrough.
And it was approved by the FDA.
And it was approved, right. So thank God.
Terrific. Ravine.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, and you? How are you?
Baruch
Right,
Hashem.
aluminum, that's it.
Hopefully we'll see you in about 3 weeks.
Right, that's been a big debate.